Welcome to SSE Essentials, a podcast series exploring entries in the newly released Encyclopedia of the Social and Solidarity Economy, or SSE. The Encyclopedia is your comprehensive guide to the SSE, a concept recognized globally for its potential for inclusive and sustainable economic and social development. Published by Edward Elgar, the SSE Encyclopedia is a collective work of the United Nations Interagency Task Force on SSE, or UNTF-SSE. For today's episode, we have invited Professor Denison Jayasooria, National University of Malaysia, who contributed to the SSE Encyclopedia an entry on the SSE and the Sustainable Development Goals. Professor Jayasooria, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm fine. Thank you for this invitation and happy to be with you.
Could you briefly introduce yourself for our listeners first?
Okay, I'm Denison Jayasooria from Malaysia. I used to be with the National University of Malaysia at the Institute of Ethnic Studies as a practice professor for public advocacy. But I have been active with civil society, especially organizations working in social work and community work at the grassroots and together at regional and global levels with organizations like ASEC and REPAS. I also am involved with a parliamentary group at this point on sustainable development goals, a sociologist by training, but very much a community-oriented researcher.
Let's start off with a question about the SSE and yourself. We know that you have researched SSE for a very long time, and I'm curious when you became interested in the SSE and why.
Okay, I think my background work is in the area of social work practice as a practitioner, working largely with poor communities at the grassroots. And this is displaced communities. I started off with plantation workers in Malaysia from an ethnic minority community. And it's during that time that I met an individual who is very well known in the SSE world, Dr. Ben Kunyonas, who used to work in Malaysia in a regional research center with others in the Asia Pacific Research Center here in Kuala Lumpur. And they were involved with a project called Banking for the Poor. Although the initial work was with models like the Grameen Bank, but what they did was they looked at grassroots communities that were developing alternative models like cooperatives or organizing it and looking at various things vis-a-vis, and that time World Bank and others were involved in that process in Malaysia. And it was Dr. Ben who introduced me to Asian side, especially Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, on community organizing at the grassroots. So I started off more with charity handouts, but then moved on into questions of justice, questions of exploitation. And while academics were always analyzing problems, I was attracted to SSE because it was looking at solutions. They were organizing people to self-reliance and resilience, organizing people for protest, but organizing people to find alternative sources of income rather than wait for government handout or government assisted programs. So I think the cooperative movements and other such self-help organizing movements attracted me, and that led me into exposure and into work, to research, and then understand at a broader sphere alternative economic models, not just capitalist, but where there could be economic justice, fair trade, or alternative to commercial banking, and these areas that then take informal sector as well as the third sector more seriously as an alternative to government and private sector driven.
So you talked about various aspects of SSC already, but you emphasized kind of an alternative solution, alternative centered
Yes.
approach. But we have some problems when we try to talk about SSC or explain SSC to laypersons sometimes. And if you were in a position, to talk about or to explain the SSC to layperson, what would be just a one sentence or two sentences to explain the SSC to them?
Okay, I think I'm taking the sort of points developed by ASEC in the Asian context, that it would take the triple bottom line, economy, social, and environment, plus the area of governance, which is linked to more community ownership and accountability, not just individual profits or individual self-gain, the governance of, the structure there, and plus values such as dignity, values such as justice, values such as honesty and integrity. That is not just business, but respecting diversity, more inclusive, and so forth. So I would then, we tend to use the five sort of principles here, but it's definitely different from a driven organization that is not generating income. So in SSC organizations, they do generate income for the common good. It has a business objective, but a business objective that is not just for personal or private profit or exploitative profit, but it sort of empowers and enables and helps into accountability. And I think there are enough models around the world now to show the scale up in size, as well the smallness of a community project on the ground where people are running it collectively. It could be waste management, where people actually pool the work together through a more cooperative or collective ownership, but generate income, employment, and so forth. It could be running a restaurant together. It could be tailoring. It could be product sale. Like I was in Dhaka, and a lot of the villagers were producing baskets, which are then sold for a fair price, and then marketed collectively, in contrast to very pittance prices given to the producer. So I think those kind of principles are fair trade, justice, as alternatives to market-driven, high-profit, capital-driven projects.
Thank you, Professor Jayasooria. You wrote an entry entitled the Sustainable Development Goals for the Encyclopedia. Could you explain a little bit about that entry, and could you talk a bit about, what you wanted to share with readers through your entry?
Thank you very much for that question. The entry was on sustainable development goals. In the case of sustainable development goals, it is a development agenda agreed upon by the countries of the world that are members of the United Nations. And this took place in September 2015 to replace the Millennium Development Goals. And in the Sustainable Development Goals, it's a set of 17 goals, 169 targets, and over 231 indicators. So countries are responsible uh, to present to the United Nations once in 4 years a voluntary national review report on the implementation of the SDGs. Now, those of us who are practitioners in SSE and in community work and community organizing found SSE communities as a very effective implementer of the 17 SDG goals. This is because the SDG goals and the SSE goals or SSE principles tied in with the idea of people, planet, or environment, prosperity, and profits. And there were themes on governance because SDG 16 or themes of partnership SDG 17 had a part in SSE organizations as well. So SSE organizations on the ground, it could be a rural, it could be an urban community, it could be a fishing village, it could be a forest-based community, then became excellent grassroots implementers of the 17 goals. While governments had a macro principle and policy, then this was possible. And that is what I was trying to highlight, illustrate, and show SSE grassroots communities being effective implementers of the SDG.
That's all for today's episode of SSE Essentials. The Encyclopedia of the Social and Solidarity Economy is available online for free. It is also for sale in hard copy for your libraries or bookshops. Check the links in the podcast description to get your own copy. Thanks for listening and stay tuned for the next episode of SSE Essentials.